how do I handle the emotional weight of being alone during the holidays? The very first thing and most important thing is to handle it with a little bit of grace and compassion for yourself. It really does boil down to communication, communicating with your ex about a plan, even including like who's spending time where and the gifts and all of that, so that there aren't any surprises. And I think too, just be clear on your boundaries and stick to them. Hey, beautiful. Welcome back. Welcome back to the Wellness Revolution podcast. I'm your host, Amber Shaw. For those of you who are catching this at the full video recording over on YouTube, you guys will see that I definitely got a couple new plants in the background, but I'm thinking it might be too much. Okay. I look like I'm in an Amazonian jungle, so we might need to adjust that. But if you're not catching the Wellness Revolution over on YouTube, you definitely want to do that. That is the full video of the podcast, and I'll put the link in the show notes for that. But today I want to do a little holiday Q&A. Today is all about your top questions that I get asked about how to navigate the holidays post-divorce. You know, I can remember that first holiday for me post-divorce, and it was freaking not easy. It was definitely not easy. It was just such a combination of feeling nostalgic, but then also feeling a little bit of fear and anxiety for like what's to come in the new year, for this new life, that I was now facing. And it can just feel, especially if you're like trying to co-parent for the very first time, it can feel a little bit awkward. There can be some lonely nights. The whole thing can just feel like a lot. So I first just want to recognize, if you are listening to this right now, and whether or not this is your first holiday season post-divorce, or maybe this is you're a few in and you're still struggling with it, I just want you to know that you're not alone. You are definitely not alone, and it takes time to navigate, and it takes time to create new traditions and to do things a little bit differently. But I want you to know now that I'm, I guess almost 5 years post-divorce. Trying to remember now, was it 4 or 5 years, somewhere around there, I definitely approach the holidays a little bit differently than what I did when I first started. And so I want to talk today about some of these top, like I said, these top questions that women ask about, how to get through the holidays post-divorce. And so today we're going to get real, we're going to get practical, and we are going to figure this out together. So I'm just going to dive right in with this very first question. So the first question is how do I handle the emotional weight of being alone during the holidays? Oh, yeah, that's a hard one to answer, right? But I think that the very first thing and most important thing is to handle it with a little bit of grace and compassion for yourself. If this is something that is brand new to you, there is a lot of emotions and even emotions that might surprise you, right? Sometimes those hit the hardest. And so I just really want to invite you this holiday season to just really, number one, be kind to yourself with a little bit of grace and compassion, but then also surround yourself with people that you love, even when you don't feel like it. And actually, I should say, especially when you don't feel like it. Sometimes I think, and I know for me that it's my coping mechanism to kind of isolate, right? And so I've now come to realize, though, that when I go, there is a difference between wanting to just have some space and be by myself, right? Because there's definitely a place for that, versus wanting to isolate out of like fear or anxiety. And I've gotten really good with myself of really being able to identify when I'm doing which one, right? Am I just recognizing that I need a break and I need to kind of fill my cup and just be go inside a little bit? Or am I isolating because I don't want to face a certain reality, right? And what I find is when it's the latter, That's when I actually really push myself to do the thing that I don't want to do. So if it's the holiday party invite that you said yes to, and then it's like you're getting ready to go, and then now all those feelings, those insecure feelings of like, oh my God, well now I'm going to show up as the single person, and how am I going to explain to people that that I'm divorced, or people going to want to ask me questions, and it just feels awkward. And then when people ask me what my holiday plans are, and I don't even know because I don't even have the kids this holiday, like right? All the things that can come up. Those are the times, right, that I force myself to go, because I realize that I'm not wanting to go just because I don't want to face it. And oftentimes when I actually do push myself to go, I end up having a beautiful, beautiful time. So I really want to encourage you to give yourself some grace and compassion, but also to surround yourself with people that you love, and just don't say no to invitations. Just to say no. Really think about and um, learn to distinguish are you just saying no because you need time to recoup, or are you saying no out of fear, right? Okay, that was a long-winded way of answering question number 1, and I've got like 14 more on here, so I need to speed this up, people. Okay, y'all know I'm a talker. Okay, I'm a talker. But let's go to question number 2. What do I do if I don't have the kids for the holidays? First of all, what I would say is I really want to encourage you to plan ahead on that. Okay. If you are somebody that knows what your schedule is ahead of time, I really want you, like during the holidays, I want you to take a look at that, and I want you to make a plan. Okay. Whether or not that plan is to intentionally, and I want you to do it from a good place, right? I don't want you to make this plan when you're feeling really down, really sad, really upset, of like any of these emotions, anxious, whatever. I really want you to sit down and make a plan for what you're going to do at the holidays on a day that you are feeling good and operating from a place of strength and clarity, because that's your true self. Right? That's really that's your true self showing through. And so I want you to make plans when you are from that place. Okay. And whether or not you make plans to be by yourself, or be around a lot of people, or be with just a few people, whatever that looks like, I just want you to formulate a plan and make it from your higher self, right? Formulate that plan from your higher self, and then stick to the plan. This kind of goes back to what I was saying in question number 1, which is just, stick to the plan, because it can be very easy to, when you're operating from that higher place, to make a plan, and then things can kind of go awry. As if something triggers you, or these feelings pop up, negative feelings pop up, it can be really easy to just deviate from the plan. But trust me, if you make the plan from your higher self, right, from that place, then that's the direction you should head. So make the plan and stick to it. Okay, so question number 3, how can I create new traditions without feeling guilty or sad about letting go of the old ones? Oh, I get this one. I get this one so fully, because I'm such a traditions person, right? Like I love creating things that we do. There's a lot of nostalgia attached to that. I think when I was growing up, I had 6 brothers and sisters, and we just we had some traditions, but it just wasn't like a thing in my family. I think because my parents were just so busy just trying to like hold freaking everything together, right? But I think what I've learned in formulating new traditions as a single mom is that for me, it's really about remembering what the traditions are about, right? And what I mean by that is not so much focusing on what the actual tradition was, but more so focusing on how it made you feel. Right? How it made you feel. And I think that when you can really put your attention on that, and not the actual thing, right? Because the actual thing doesn't really matter. It's more so about, every year remembering maybe a certain thing that you did, because it creates nostalgia, it creates certain feelings for you. It brings you back to that place each and every year, and remembering how that feels. So I think that when you can operate from a place of a feeling as opposed to a thing, it allows you to create new traditions a little bit more freely. And I also think that it's important, like if you've got certain traditions with your kids, I think it's important to have these conversations. Like, hey, I know typically, this year things are going to look a little bit differently. And I know that may feel hard. It's hard for me too. But I really, I've really want to make this holiday, this Christmas or whatever it is that you celebrate, I want to make it special. And so this is what we're going to try this year or whatever that looks like, right? And just encouraging your kids to also have an open mind. But I think for me, that's what's been really helpful is just tapping into the feeling that tradition gives and not the actual thing. So question number 4, how do I stay positive when I see happy families and couples everywhere? How do I avoid comparing my situation to others, especially on social media? Well, girl, first of all, I want you to know and I want you to remember that that what's going on the outside with these quote happy couples that you see and what you see on social media isn't always the case. I mean, I think that's first and foremost. It's so easy to fall into this like comparison trap on social media. And I think it can be very normal to see happy, what would appear to be happy couples on social media, and then start drawing all sorts of, conclusions and assumptions and all the things. And the truth is that, as we know, like social media is just such like a highlight, right, of what's going on in people's lives. And that really might not be what's going on at all. I can tell you for years, people didn't have any idea how miserable, my relationship was and what was going on, in my marriage. And I worked very hard to maintain that happy facade. So I just first and foremost want you just to remember that piece of it. And I think what can be helpful is really when you see that is really having a little bit of a reframe. Number one, I think that when the energy that we put out is what we attract. And if you are trying to attract happiness, right, and peace and connectedness and all of that, all of those, I think, feelings that a lot of us want to bring into our lives, then we really do have to also to be expressing that in our own lives. And so I think that, when we start to feel triggered by something that we see or happy couples, I think it's okay to acknowledge that you feel triggered, right? Acknowledge that first and just and recognize it. Give yourself some grace and compassion, but then also try and have a reframe, right? And if it's too hard to have a reframe that that you do have a happy life and that maybe that person is coming for you, or you are going to find that person again. If that feels too far-fetched, then maybe just having a little bit of a reframe and a mantra to say something like, I'm working on creating a life of happiness and joy, right? Or I'm working on finding I'm working on finding my next person or something like that. Something that really just that you can sink into, that you can authentically believe, right? Sometimes with mantras and affirmations, we can say things and we ourselves don't even believe them. So I think that can be really, really helpful is just, like I said, number one, recognizing that everything's not what it seems on social media. Number two, acknowledging the fact that it is triggering you and give yourself a little bit of grace, but then choose again. Choose to have a little bit of a reframe, right? A little bit of a reframe of your situation, and then move on. And then here's the other thing I'm going to say. Listen, girl, if something or someone is triggering you over and over again on social media, like maybe it's okay to take a little break from social media. Like that's okay too, right? Like, especially if you are really in that raw healing place, it's okay to just say, you know what? I'm just having a hard time right now, like, feeling triggered and I'm really trying to work through this, and it's best for me if I just take a beat back. Like, give yourself that space. That is okay too, right? That is totally okay. So the next one, how can, okay, well, this kind of lends into what we just asked. Like, how can I avoid triggers or situations that bring up painful memories? Well, I think for me, this is a hard one to answer because I think that it is important to, in the beginning, to take care of yourself and not put yourself, and this doesn't even need to be like in the beginning. I just mean like I always think it's a good idea to like recognize situations that make you feel triggered or uncomfortable or really evoke a lot of negative emotion, and like not and give yourself the space and the permission to not put yourself in that position, right? Like I think that that is totally okay. But then I do think that there is something to be said about over time, not avoiding situations completely, because sometimes the only way to get, to heal or to move forward is to move through it, and to move through it, as I keep saying, with grace and compassion. And so I really think that what this requires is you just being honest with yourself, right? Being honest with yourself. Is this something that you are avoiding because you are working on healing and it just doesn't feel good to you to put yourself in that situation? Then give yourself some space. But if it's something though that you've been avoiding, over and over and over again, and like eventually you have to rip the Band-Aid off, sometimes ripping the Band-Aid off can be the best thing for you because it forces you to move through it. Should I attend holiday gatherings alone, or is it better to skip them? Is it okay to skip certain holiday events if they feel too hard emotionally? Girl, the answer is yes, yes, yes. It is okay to skip holiday events if they feel too hard emotionally. Now, I say that though with like a little bit of like an asterisk here, which kind of piggybacks to what I was just saying, which is, which I was even setting up in that first question, which is, I think that sometimes though, like if we say yes to something and then it's like last minute, it just feels too much. Sometimes actually like still following through with the plan can be the best decision. This is why, again, it goes back to like making decisions and your plans for the holidays, operating from a place from your higher self, right? When you feel good and you feel strong and you feel clear, right? And then, making your plan from that. But when you do make your plan from that place and something still feels just really, really hard and you're not ready for it, right? Like maybe, your ex-partner invited you over for dinner or something like that with the kids, and that just feels like too much. That is okay to give yourself permission to turn that invitation down. Now, when it comes to doing holiday gatherings alone, I think that sometimes the story we create in our head is that everybody is going to be judging us. People are going to be like talking behind our backs and all of these things. And granted, yes, there are negative people in this world that do shit like that, right? But I think for a lot of times, especially if you're going to a holiday gathering where it is like people that you really love and that they love you, they're not doing all the judging that we think they are. Right. And really, they just want you there. They just want you there. They want you to connect with you. And sometimes that can be exactly what our soul needs, even when we don't feel like it. So again, I think I'm going to just keep repeating this. It's like really getting honest with yourself is, are you avoiding this situation because it really is just too hard emotionally and you're just not ready? Or are you avoiding this situation because you are just wanting to isolate, right? And really, you really should attend the event, and you may surprise yourself, right? So I think it's just about getting honest with yourself and where you're at. Is it normal to feel like the holidays will never be the same? Well, yeah, girl, that's normal. And what I want to say about that is that they won't be the exact same. They won't be the exact same. But the logistics of it, right? Because you're divorced, right? And that is not going to be the same. But do I think that it's possible to experience the same feelings of joy and peace and connectedness and love and friendship and all these things that that we can experience during the holidays? Do I think it's possible to experience that again in a different way? Yes. Absolutely, I do. Right? So yes, it's normal to feel that way, but you can absolutely recreate those feelings again, but it just takes a little bit of time. How do I manage the financial strain of the holidays now that I'm on my own? Ooh, this is a good one. I go back to girl, have a plan. set a budget and have a plan. I think sometimes what can be common for divorced parents is maybe one of the parents feels like they need to overbuy for their children in order to compensate for the difficulties of divorce. And I just am not a believer in that. I also am just not a believer that the holidays are a time where where parents should go like crazy overboard on buying their kids gifts. That's just the way I operate in my family. And so I think what can be helpful is, and if you have a good co-parenting situation, like I do with my ex, like talk to your ex. Hey, let's set a budget. Typically what we do is like Frank will buy for Shaw, my son, and I'll buy for Avery. Because we split the gifts, right? We say that we say in our family, like I'll buy the gifts for Avery, but they're from mom and dad, right? And then Frank will buy from Shaw, but they're from mom and dad, but we set a budget ahead of time. And we stick to it. And that's how we really kind of manage that piece of it. And if you need to adjust your budget, because things are different this year and you're single, then you might need to adjust your budget, right? But I think that definitely having a plan and a budget is really, really important. Okay, I'm going to get to a few more here. How do I navigate holiday traditions with my ex for the sake of the kids? What's the best way to co-parent during the holidays without drama? I think this is a hard question to answer that like generally, because I think every situation is different. I mean, I know every situation is different, right? So, I think that really depends on your situation with the ex. I just think that what's really important is, and let me back up here. When I say like for the sake of the kids, it doesn't mean that you have to have your boundaries crossed or put yourself in terrible situations, because I've done this before with your ex where you're really emotionally not ready, but you're doing it for the sake of the kids. I don't recommend that. I can talk to my mom because I've done that many times over the last few years, and who it didn't serve was me, right? And I put myself in a situation that was emotionally very challenging for me. And so I would just say that, definitely as far as navigating it with your ex, like just again, be honest with yourself on what you're a yes for and what you're a no for and what feels good to you, right? But I think that the best way to co-parent during the holidays is I think number one, again, going back to having a plan, right? Like with your ex, like getting really crystal clear on like who has the kids, what, when. This is all about communication. Really we talk about co-parenting all the time, and it really does boil down to communication, right? So communicating with your ex about a plan, even including like, who's spending time where and the gifts and all of that, so that there aren't any surprises. And I think too, just be clear on your boundaries, and stick to them. Right. And I think that when really what makes it good for the kids is that when they see that the parents are in a good place. So be really mindful about overextending yourself over the holidays, right? And then also, again, when it comes to your ex, about not sticking to your boundaries. I think that's the best way for the kids to be in a good place over the holidays, because when you're happy, they're happy. That really is true. So what can I do to avoid falling into unhealthy coping mechanisms like overeating or drinking? Oh, girl, I can go on for days about this because I am the queen. I can be the queen of unhealthy coping mechanisms. I have worked really hard over the last even like 10 years to not make that my MO. But I think that, again, I sound like a broken record, but God, this is really so obvious to me that it really does. So much of this comes back to having a damn plan, right? And so what I mean by that is, when it comes to, overeating or, over drinking and things like that, like, first of all, being aware of like situations that you could be putting yourself into, like a holiday party or, whatever that looks like, where you could be putting yourself in a tough situation that maybe that could lead to the overeating or the drinking, right? So having a plan, I always love to like phone a friend. So anytime like I've got a situation that's coming up, and I'm like, girl, like I'm I've got this coming up and this, XYZ is happening. I'm a little bit worried that I'm just going to totally like numb out by, stuffing my face and drinking 5 martinis. I'll usually talk to my phone a friend is always my mom usually. I'll just talk to my mom about it beforehand, right? And just like think it through, right? Like I kind of like to think it through the situation. And so that I have a little bit of a plan. And so by phoning a friend, it's a little bit of accountability. So that's, I think, my first tip is accountability. And I think the second, the second thing that I would say, because it's very easy to even just overeat and overdrink when you're sitting by yourself on the couch with your kids, right? I mean, or if you're, well, even with your kids or without your kids, right? But again, I think it just comes back to just having a little bit of a plan. If you know that you're going to be home by yourself one night, or if you feel that you are starting to feel a little bit emotional and it could be easy for you to like, go for the bag of donuts and go for the bottle of wine, phone a friend. Girl, phone a friend and really talk through it and have some accountability there. I think that's the biggest thing is accountability. How do I handle people who pity me or make comments about my divorce? The thing I want to say about this is I think that it depends on where the source, who the source is. Like if somebody it is that really knows you and loves you and they are, making that you feel like they're pitying you or they're making comments about the divorce. I think that especially when it comes to the pitying, I think it's having a little bit of compassion even for that person because they might not know how to respond to you, right? This might be uncharted territory for them as well. And maybe it's uncomfortable for them and how that can come out is pity. But really, I think that sometimes we can perceive something as pity. And maybe that's really a reflection of how we're feeling about ourselves. But really they're just trying to give us comforting words. And we are internalizing that as pity because that's the lens in which we're viewing it. But it may not be pity. It may just be they're trying to give you comforting words. So I really just want to encourage you to like give that person the benefit of the doubt. Now, if somebody is making comments about the divorce and it feels like it's negative and it's not comfortable, girl, use your effing voice. Use your voice and tell them in a nice way that you're not interested in continuing this conversation. I actually had this come up at a Halloween get together just a few months ago at a friend's house. There was somebody that was coming over and they're just a shit. They are a couple that they are shit stirs. They are pot stirs. And so like Frank, my ex, and his girlfriend Bethany, and we all have a beautiful co-parenting situation. They were coming over and one of the woman at the party kind of wanted to like pull me aside and talk to me about the situation. And I just wasn't here for it. I didn't want to talk about the situation. I didn't have to explain the situation, how like me, Frank, and Bethany were all, getting along and everything was great. It's like no one's business. I didn't have to talk about it with anybody. And so I basically said to this person, like, I'm not interested in this conversation. Like, everything's fine. Like, move on. Right. So I think it's just, use your voice and don't fucking be afraid to do that. Okay. Because at the end of the day, it's not anyone's business. Right. And if you feel comfortable talking about it to somebody that you really trust, then great. But if not, then girl, don't. And don't feel pressured to do that. And or if you're not comfortable yet making an excuse, tell them you got to use the bathroom or you want to get another drink and walk away and don't come back. Okay. So there's that. All right. So last question that I want to address is, what are some ways to practice gratitude when I feel heartbroken? I understand this one, right? Sometimes it's like, gosh, how can we feel grateful for the situation that we're in when the situation that we're in feels so hard and it hurts so bad, right? So I think that sometimes when it comes to gratitude, it's not about being necessarily like grateful for the position that you're in, but feeling grateful for the lessons that you're learning. And I know that can feel equally as hard, right? But I think that for me, like that belief was like a huge, huge thing for me that really helped me on those days when I was feeling very heartbroken and I didn't have a lot of gratitude because I felt like my whole fucking life was falling apart and all the things. I really just had to hold strong to this belief that I was exactly where I was supposed to be and that I was learning lessons that I was supposed to learn. And that I wasn't really in charge. For me, this is where my faith comes in. For me, I really do believe in a higher power. I believe in spirit, God, universe, whatever you want to call it. And I just had to believe that there is a divine plan for my life. And that even though I was going through this, there was a purpose for it. And so on those days where gratitude felt really hard, I would say to myself, I'm not grateful that I'm getting divorced, but I'm grateful for the lessons I'm learning. And I don't know yet how this is going to, help me to get to my next level of where I'm supposed to be in my life. But I'm willing to learn and I'm willing to listen. And that for me is really on those days is what got me through. I also think for me, like what really helped me in gratitude was focusing on the small things. So I know it's really easy to be like, hey, I'm grateful for my kids. I'm grateful for my dog, like all the things. Yes, we're grateful for our kids. We're grateful for the dog. I get it, right? But I always like to think about, like I'm grateful for my son's laugh when he gets like super amped up on a joke, and I would like think about it, and then even in me now talking about it, I'm smiling because I'm embodying that joy and that gratitude. And so for me, what helped me to really embody gratitude was to get really specific and think about not just things, people, places, or things, right? But think about feelings. What feelings are you grateful for, and how does that show up? And then also then how can you get more of that, right, in your life? So I hope that this has been helpful for you. I appreciate these questions that you guys send me through my DMs. If you have more questions that you want me to answer, I would love to make, this Q&A session with you guys a regular thing. So send me your questions. And I really just want to just reassure you that, the holidays can be great. They will be different, but they can be great when you have the right mindset. All right. They can be great when you have the right mindset. So I want to leave you with that as we enter into December. And thank you for listening. And I'll catch you on the next one.